Welcome to the Profitable Mini Farm. I'm your host, Diego, D-I-E-G-O. Each week on the Profitable Mini Farm, farmer Jody Roebuck and I take a closer look at what makes Jody's small market farm in New Zealand so successful. We started this show because a lot of people questioned the viability of market farming. Can you actually make a living doing it, or do you have to just eke by? Well, we didn't want anyone to have to eke by, and we both know of so many farmers who are crushing it market farming. So the show is to help out not just the people who are successful to become more successful, but it's really aimed at the people who are new and starting out, or the people that are struggling, to help get them to the next level, like some of these other people are who are doing so well. Each week, we focus on a specific topic around the nuts and bolts of farming, in the field farming. We don't talk a lot of business. We will cover some, but it's mostly in the field farming, in the soil, in the dirt, growing crops. Today's episode focuses specifically on the wash pack setup. This is going to be broken up into a few episodes. Today, we're focusing on the building part of the wash pack setup. So you'll have a structure that houses all of your equipment, like your bubblers and your drying screens. That's next episode. Today, it's about the building that houses all of that equipment. We're going to hit on things like design considerations and important things to think about when putting this building up on your farm. But before we get into today's episode, a word from our sponsor. This episode's brought to you by Paper Pot Co. Farm Tools. Paper Pot Co. is your source for time and labor-saving farm tools. From the Paper Pot transplanter to the Jang seeder to the industry-leading Quick Click seeder, our goal at Paper Pot Co. is to help you plant fast so you can live more. Learn how you can become more efficient on your farm with some of the tools we have to offer at paperpot.co. Picking up from the previous episode, we now have our site designed. Beds are in place. What next?
Start with market streams. That kind of drives everything initially and long term. The changes that come in the future are always market driven. So we built our wash and pack before we sold our first bag of salad, and there was an investment up front. We didn't have farm income coming in to spend on that wash and pack. And looking back, it's the best thing we did, Diego, is building that wash and pack. I think, on a farm like La Grilla JM's quoting 40% of your work is wash and pack. We're primarily a mixed salad business. In summer, we have more variety. Everything's got to come through wash and pack. It's quality control. And wash and pack in the earlier piece, I highly recommend it.
Why wash pack before something else? Other people might want to say, okay, I want to get planting right away. I want to put up high tunnels first. Why do you put wash pack at the beginning?
I've seen growers that have been farming as long as us that still don't have a wash and pack. And it's like my second home. Everything's got to come through wash and pack before it leaves the farm. And we spend so much time in there. It's a really comfortable space for our staff as well. We can work in the wash and pack while it's raining or in the heat of the afternoon. I think it's underestimated how much work is going to be involved post-harvest.
People that are experienced are going to know right away what wash pack means. When you talk about wash pack, what's the equipment you include in that? Are we talking everything, obviously, from washing the veg to refrigeration to the structure that houses it? What's your definition of the wash pack?
Yeah, I think everything you've just mentioned, Diego, everything comes in from the field in the condition it is, pre-graded at harvest, and everything goes through some kind of wash process. For salad, that goes through the bubbler, which is a jacuzzi. And so the general process for everything is washing, screening, spinning, drying, and we're grading the whole way through, and then into the walk-in chiller. And then it comes back out for the next stage, which could be mixing, packaging. So our wash and pack design is set up that we call it the the main wash and pack, which is 5 meters square, and it's completely enclosed in. That's where the majority of our work is working on salad, which is our more profitable part of the business. And attached to that, we have a cantilever roof with tinted clear light on the roof to keep the heat down and the rain out. And we have lots of lighting. And the outdoor wash and pack is where we water blast totes, pre-wash all of our root veg, and the little bit of bunching that we do, like spring onions and coriander, that all happens in the outdoor washroom. After everything's processed in the outdoor washroom, it comes through the indoor washroom, mainly for final drying on the screen and packaging. And packaging's right next to the walk-in chiller.
So the primary things you have to wash on your farm: root veg, which should be like your radish, turnips, carrots, and then you have all your greens that are coming out of the field. Is there anything that's not in those two categories getting washed?
Cucumbers, after picking those, we just rub them down with a dry towel before packaging or storage. So that's very little work involved there. Tomatoes, we don't wash, obviously. They go straight into storage or packaging, or ideally delivery. That's the one place you don't want your vegetables when we're supplying retail. The one place we don't want our produce is in our chiller. We want it in our fridges across town. There's very few items that we don't wash. At a guess, I'd say tomatoes and pea shoots, which we grow in the field. They just come out so clean. We hand harvest them, and pea shoots are the longest crop to dry if you did put them in the bubbler. So they're so clean, we just grade them and actually don't wash them.
For somebody just starting out, I think designing a wash pack system before you farmed, it's intimidating. You're really just relying on the advice of someone else because you've never done it. You don't know how big of a bubbler you need. You don't know how big of a drying rack you need. You might not even need a drying rack, as some people don't use them in their conditions. How would you advise somebody to think about sizing their wash pack, for a market farm?
My kind of journey was working on other people's farms to get a bit of perspective. And, the style of our business is very influenced by Curtis Stone. Having worked in Curtis's wash and pack, amongst others, but that was really the scale and the style that we were going to base our business on, was very insightful. After that trip, which was 2016, I worked on Curtis's farm and on John Martin's 2 farms. Obviously, the big FQT is a much bigger scale than us. Really, our wash and pack is just a very small version of FQT. Curtis's wash and pack, with his beautiful hot, dry climate, the structure was a little bit different. He just had a roof line, wood chips on the ground. We're completely closed in. We've got insulation in all our walls to keep the temperature down. Concrete floor with drainage. I think that one's overlooked because you might be surprised, but everything that is waste that you're grading out goes to the floor through coming off the drying screen, what we're not including in our sales. And then that gets swept up, goes to the compost, and then we can hose the floor down, water blast the floor down. And I think the general rule for the wash and pack is meeting the Food Act, and that'll be different everywhere, but clean, safe food comes from is done efficiently in a wash and pack that is set up where it's super easy to clean. Nothing touches the floor. We've chosen with our wash and pack that is small to put everything on wheels, so it's modular. So for a huge harvest, we can scale up just by bringing in trolleys that are on wheels. For example, when it's time to mix our salad, we can set out and mix about 14 tubs of salad in one hit. 2 people can do that in 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think there's really layers or levels of wash packs, from the extreme DIY that people have of just starting out. Some people are washing in buckets, more or less out in the field, and that's how they get started. But now, especially post-COVID, you're seeing increased food safety come into play. And I'm not an expert on this, but I think the general rule is like all surfaces have to be cleanable, sanitizable, and you have to be in an environment that can be controlled, meaning, there's not birds flying in there that can, poop on everything and things like that. So I think it's one area that is a big investment, because I'm with you. I think you want to do it right in the beginning. It doesn't mean you have to build your ultimate wash pack on day one, but I think it is one area where you spend money. Things like concrete, so you're not standing in mud. Things like insulation or hot water or heat and AC. For worker comfort, 40% of your time's in wash pack. Those people want to be comfortable. If you can control that environment, it just helps the produce be that much better. And the equipment you're going to have, if you want movable equipment like you have, good luck on doing that on something like wood chips or just a dirt floor that's going to turn into a mud pit. I think it's the same as when you're designing a field. You always want to be thinking, where is all the excess water going? When you drain bubblers, when your root washer empties, where's that water going and how do you get it away? And I always think, imagine you're getting sued, right? And an inspector comes to your farm. Would you be okay and like proud to show them your wash pack? Or would you not really want that inspector to show up on your farm? And if you're the latter, then you probably need to do some design.
Sure. So the process with our wash and pack over the years is it's the one place where you strive for continuous improvement, and the auditors really acknowledge that too. It may not be perfect, but if you can explain, your future, we're going to do this, we're going to close it in, everything's going to be stainless. They'd like to see that you're striving to make improvements in there. Our initial pack, when we built it, was not closed in on our south side, so that's your north side, and that's where our cold wind and rain come in. And it was just money. The wash and pack was operational from day one, and the configuration hadn't changed. So we come in, we've got hand wash followed by the bubbler. Originally that was a feed trough, followed by our spinning, and then the drying screen, which then turns around straight into the chiller. And then from the chiller, we come straight out to packaging. So nothing's really changed in the workflow there, except for over years. After our third or fourth season, we completely closed in the wash and pack. Glass doors, roller doors on the south side. We lined the ceiling with, it's like a signboard. It's white. It's very good for light. It's also super easy to clean. And at that point of completely closing in the wash and pack, we doubled the lighting, especially even for places like you might bring in a mixing trolley just for 20 minutes of the wash and pack process, and we're able to turn on lights above where all of our workers are, because grading is your biggest job to do in the wash and pack. Getting your moisture content right really helps with your storage. And so the layout hasn't changed, but we have spent more money in the wash and pack over the years as we can afford it. And I think you just nailed it, Diego, that if it's comfortable for your staff, it's good for the quality of your produce as well.
I'm thinking layouts, and there's a lot of places people can get information on layouts. So if we think, okay, how can we leverage your experience here on this episode, right, to help somebody new? We don't need to tell them how to build a bubbler. They can find that information somewhere else, or how to build a drying rack. They can get that out of Curtis's book or something. When you look at a wash pack, and let's say you had a budget to build their wash pack, where do you think the money is best spent? So I could buy a commercial triple washing line for my lettuce and have it under an easy up in the middle of a field. So all the money went to the washing. Or I could build an amazing structure and I'm washing out of buckets. I mean, that's an extreme example, but if you think about the budgeting that goes into a whole wash pack, where would you prioritize the money, and where are areas you think you can save or DIY it?
I would go for the later. I would invest in a nice build, even if you're washing in buckets in there, because you know that when you can afford it, you can build a bubbler and you can retrofit and keep investing. So I would start with the build. And just as time allows, as your market stream allows you to reinvest, just keep doing that over time. We started with the plastic bubbler. After our 4th season, we made a custom stainless steel bubbler. That was a game changer for us. The footprint is no bigger, but it has double the liters of water. The visibility is way better. It's also, we can sanitize it. It's just more efficient. We can put double the salad in the new bubbler. And like changes this year, before going into winter, outside the wash and pack, we just had wood chips. And so you also got to think, how do I get the produce from my chiller to my market streams? And over time, our access to the wash and pack, which was about a foot deep of big wood chips, just turned to mud. With our rainfall, I couldn't even get my 4-wheel drive truck in there 2 winters ago. So we concreted the access last season up to wash and pack, and then put a cantilever roof out over top. So the vehicle is under dry, the vehicle's even dry when we're loading up. And concrete's a game changer for us because we use trolleys. We don't do any lifting. We're wheeling everything around. Now we can wheel our harvest, which could be heavy like root vegetables, straight out to the truck. And regardless of the weather, we can load up. It's super easy to keep clean. And we don't have dirt, wood chips and junk coming in to the wash and pack, stuck to your feet. That investment, Diego, it's a 30 square meter roof line out front. It's clear light with lighting, and the concrete, which we've got fall and drainage, was about 17,000. And I think one of the savings you can make is if you're handy yourself, you can do a fair bit of that work yourself as well. That's going to take you away from the field. Like we did the boxing up and unboxing for the concrete. We laid the drains. We stood the posts up. There comes a point where you don't have time to be doing the build yourself because you're working in the field. And that's one transition we had where in the early days, we did everything we could. These days, I keep the farm running and I pay our builder to come and do that work for us. And I think I'd like to ask your take on this one, but you ring a builder out of the phone book and you say, I want to build a wash and pack. They've got no idea what you're even talking about. So having some plans formulated so they can see it, having some content that they can see to understand what it is they're going to be building for you. Your builder's a key person in that process, and your plumber and your electrician.
I agree. I think there's a lot that comes to mind with planning. A few things that I've just learned over the years, and I kind of live by this mantra of move in the direction of the most optionality, like always have an option. So unless your property is so tight that like there's only one spot to put a wash pack and you could never build it again and never make it bigger, I think you need to be thinking ahead, meaning here's my initial wash pack. This is what I need, and you design that out. But if I ever wanted to expand, what would expansion look like? You doesn't mean you have to ever expand, but you want to design it and put it in a spot where you could expand. Things like you mentioned, like, can you get a vehicle in there? I can just see this nightmare scenario as somebody, builds a wash pack in the quote perfect location, and then they're like, oh, I can't even get my truck or van anywhere near close to that. So I think those things are important. All these little nuances. Where is it in relation to the product coming from off the field? It's like a permaculture zones thing. If most of your beds converge into one area, then it makes sense to have the wash pack there, but it also has to be near utilities. You're probably going to have a bathroom on site for staff. You're going to need hand wash stations now for food compliance. So you need to be able to get plumbing into there. You're obviously going to need electricity into there. The water drainage, again, we go back to that. I think thinking with the end in mind is the route that people should look at. I love what you said of, hey, focus on the things that are harder to change first. And then the things that are easier to change, you can do that stuff later. So like it's harder to change where you put a building than it is to get a new bubbler. So if you spend most of your time designing that layout, your effort's better spent there. If you get the wrong cart, well, you wasted some money on the cart, but you can probably sell it and get a new one. So I like that. And I think the other thing is people go down this route of like, I just want to build it myself. Like, oh, it's too expensive to get a builder. And this is one of those things, maybe, but maybe not. Like if you're really handy and you have a ton of surplus time, then you build it yourself. But for most people who are starting a business, I can say just hire it out. You're going to bring somebody in who does this every day, has the right tools, has the right crew, has the right equipment. They can bang it out, probably 5 times faster than you can. And that allows you to focus on the things you should be doing in the business, like adding value, increasing sales, those types of things. So, when you look at, say, your wash pack, when you first put it in location A on the farm, does that location still make sense given how your farm is expanded? Or if you had to do it over, would you actually move where it is?
Well, no, our wash and pack, I'm real happy where it is. As we expand, so just to give a bit of context, we've only got about 3/4 of an acre, of flat land. That's our potential as we grow. And the way it sits, the wash and pack is the shortest amount of steps from the 4 furthest parts of our production. So it kind of works that, and the main path goes past all our beds, greenhouses to wash and pack. The new greenhouse we're building lines up with the concrete access to wash and pack. So again, we can utilize our wheels and trolleys very easily through that the new main access. The kind of, we're small scale, fast turnover crops. So the whole farm is high rotation, and it's not far for any of our product to make it to wash and pack. And just jumping in there too, our wash and pack we designed with the second bay as the tool shed, which also means all of our tools that need to go out to the field and back in are super central as well. And when we cover direct seeding in another episode, you'll see how it really works for us with having the tool shed attached to the wash and pack. They're separate rooms, but the scales that we use in the wash and pack, we also use for weighing everything we direct seed in the field. And we also log everything on the back of the walk-in chiller on the farm whiteboard, so we understand the current days to maturity of all of our crops in the field blocks. So everything's got to come from the field to the wash and pack. That's before we determine what are we bringing in today, or as we bring it in, we can continuously check in what's the current days to maturity on this crop, which helps with our consistency.
In terms of the interior layout, one thing I like that you mentioned is everything's on rollers, or probably a lot of it's on rollers, not all of it. And that allows you to move things around, either, I guess, as you learn more information about, hey, what process actually works best, as the farm grows, as the maybe needs of the wash pack change seasonally. Because, if you're harvesting a bunch of tomatoes at a particular time of year and not so much salad mix, well, your wash packs can operate a lot different than it would in the middle of early spring when you have no tomatoes. And I'm big into like processes and flow. I think you are too, where it's like, okay, how can I give somebody a situation where they're taking the least amount of steps, or they're moving heavy stuff the least amount that they have to. And for somebody who's never designed a wash pack before, you might just say, oh, put the sink there, put the dryer over here and put the packing table here. But then that flow might, people might be crossing paths when you do that. A couple things. What are your thoughts on, one, just kind of doing what you did in the field of like, lay it out in ahead of time, have some things set up. They could just be lawn chairs or crates or whatever, of like, here's the dryer, here's the bubbler, here's this, here's the door. I'm going to pretend to come in from the field with product. Where am I going to set it? How does it work through? And if we had several people in here, how do they operate in this space? I mean, a 10-foot by 20-foot space might sound great on paper or in your head, but then when you actually lay that out, and now you have things that are 3 feet deep, you only have a 4-foot walkway, suddenly it's like super tight. So did you do anything like that when you designed yours, of just mapping it out to figure out where should stuff go and how can I work in this space?
I should have laid it out in the field. I didn't. I did do a sketch of the configuration, and it wasn't to scale. It was just a sketch, and I sent that sketch to Curtis after my trip over there, and he kind of gave me the thumbs up. Because I'd worked in wash and packs, but not for long enough to really understand this is where you're going to spend 40% plus of your time. As soon as Curtis came back to visit us, the first thing he pointed at was the bagging area, Diego, and he said, "That's your bottleneck." And he was dead right. And so we changed the layout there. We just had a wooden table, it was makeshift. We changed to a long, skinny stainless bench. And now underneath, everything's on wheels. We've got our packaging. We've got spare crates ready to put product into. We've got our inventory for everything we need to keep wash and pack going. And the calibrated scales on top of that bench, plus another whiteboard above there where we track all our orders. So that's the tightest space we have, our packaging area. But kind of what I've learned over the years is your best friend is wheels. We've just screwed wheels onto everything, like the mixing trolleys, but also our vegetable crates. So one vegetable crate has wheels on it. I call that a base plate. And then we can just stack more crates up on top of that. That means you've got crates ready to go to fill. Or if you're scaling up, let's say you're doing your Christmas salad harvest, for us that's summer, and you're doing double the volumes, you can reconfigure the tabletop layout simply just by wheeling stuff around. And by setting the crates up, you can set it to a height for a short person or a tall person. You can keep everyone comfortable. So kind of just stick with this theme of being able to reconfigure constantly as your workflow changes, you learn new things, your marketing streams increase. A lot of people come, they see a wash and pack, and their first question is your walk-in chiller big enough? And my answer is, it's only 2 meters by 2 meters. And it's in the center of our wash and pack and tool shed area. It's one step to get to it. And I say, well, if we get to full capacity on our 3/4 of an acre, take on 2 more supermarkets, we've got the space because we're stacking everything vertically. Once all of our salads are washed and in the chiller, and they're just like towers, we can wheel out, and we've bagged up the single items, and then we're ready to mix. We can set up, bring in the mixing trolleys, set up to do a mix. And if we double in scale, all we need to do is bring out half of the salad, mix that. And as we're spreading out, that's the time that you're briefly taking up all your wash and pack space. We mix half of the salad. So that could be radish micros, pea shoots, Mizuno lettuce. And then we fill the tubs up, stack them on a tower, push them back in the chiller, and then bring the second half out. And we're already set up for mixing, and we just hit the second mix. So we can see that we can double our turnover, our volumes, without having to reinvent the wheel, build a bigger wash and pack. And it's being able to change your configuration around with the wheels. The mixing trolleys are just such a game changer for us. And going back to the early days, we didn't have any of this. And when it was time to mix the salad, we were putting crates on the floor and just total makeshift. And it was small scale and it worked. But now we're set up to be able to scale up, scale down in a matter of 10 minutes. And when it's time to clean that place, roll everything out, sweep everything up, wash down the floor, and then come in and water blast everything. So one person in 45 minutes could do a deep clean of the whole wash and pack, including the walk-in chiller. For us, it has a concrete floor, so you just walk straight in there. There's no ramp or step up to it.
So you could just wheel a cart right into there.
Utilizes the space and makes life easy. Yep, you can have a crate. I've got these little steel crates that for heavy veg. You can have a crate with 150 kilogram of carrots stacked in it and just wheel them in and out without lifting. Once they're ready to go to supermarket, it's pretty heavy. We can wheel it straight to the truck, which is about 2 meters away from the door of the wash and pack of the walk-in chiller.
Yeah, I love the idea of wheels, because the good thing about wheels is if you're buying something and has the option to buy wheels, it costs a little more. But once you put it in place with the wheels on it, if you don't ever want to use the wheels, that's fine. You don't have to move it. But if you ever do want to move it, the wheels are there. And I think that's critical. I think there's more emphasis now on worker comfort and just safety. And I mean, if you're a business owner, you want a safe work environment. At least you should, because if you'd want to provide that for anybody, because that's what you would want to be provided if you were working somewhere. And you also want people to be happy. Again, probably because you just generally should want your employees to be happy. But in general, safety and happiness is going to lead to more productivity. So if you think about, hey, I'm moving heavy stuff, is somebody lugging this around? If they are, I mean, you have the potential for back injuries, you have the potential for slippage, those types of things. So just by putting it on a cart makes it a lot easier for more people. And I think people also need to be thinking about who's in their wash pack and how are you designing this. If you're some dude that's 6'2", right? Like you might want things a certain way, but if you're never working in the wash pack and all your shelves or your countertops are 45 inches high or something like that, and then, the person you hire is 5'2" and weighs $110, they're on a stool. And that's just a total mess. So it's like, who's working there? A lot of farms employ stay-at-home moms because it's like a great job for them because it's seasonal, or it's not every day of the week. It's kind of clumpy. Like, we need you 2 days a week for 4 hours. And for a lot of moms that works. I know a lot of farms that do this. And like, how would those moms operate in the space? Probably a lot different than how some big guy would operate in the space. So I think about who's going to be in there. And then just from a comfort standpoint, it's like, would you want to operate in this environment if you were in here 8 hours a day? And it's not like, oh, let's design some luxury wash pack. But again, it just goes back to safety and happiness. If you wouldn't be comfortable operating in this environment, why do you expect somebody else to do it, especially when you're probably paying them a lot less than you'd pay yourself?
This winter, which we've just got through winter, was wet again. But with the new concrete access and the drainage and the clear light roof and lighting over the top, we didn't really notice the winter because our work environment, it was just way more comfortable. We can leave produce out front of the wash and pack now because it's undercover. We can leave produce there longer. We can load up super easy. Even in the rain, our product's still dry. We're not doing any lifting. The wheels work everywhere now. And the roof expansion out front of the wash and pack also doubled our outdoor wash and pack, which in this area was very small. Same, we've got portable trolleys here. We're using the blue spray guns, and we've got them suspended from the roof, and we use them upside down, so they're just always there at the perfect height. You don't have to hold them up. You spray, you leave the guns suspended to bunch whatever you're bunching. Just really, now we can have 3 people working on the outdoor wash and pack. The other thing that was a game changer years ago for us in the outdoor wash and pack is a water blaster, because we take top and tail all our carrots. We pre-wash them with the blue spray gun, and then we hit them briefly with the water blaster, so they come into wash and pack super clean before grading. The other thing, I think Americans call them totes, all your vegetable bins. We use a lot of vegetable bins, and some of them we use them 3 times a day, and they've got to be washed and dried between each time that salad or produce is touching them. So we've just got a base plate for our 3 standard vegetable crates or totes, and we screwed the first tote to the bottom. And so after mixing salad, we just wheel all of our totes out to the outdoor wash and pack, it's about 4 meters away in distance, and we can water blast our totes in a matter of minutes. And our system of containers, we might have 30 of those washed, and they're still wet. That 30 of those is heavy. You don't want to be lifting them. So we just make a tower of clean totes, wheel them back into the wash and pack. We'll store them in the chiller wet, and then we dry them immediately before we're filling them up with, especially with salad. The amount of time we saved just by putting in the water blaster out there was phenomenal.
Yeah, water blaster, translating your New Zealandese, I'm assuming, is a pressure washer here in the States.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's just a domestic one, cheap as.
So if we think about this from a just macro design, if we can, forgetting the minutia of what's in here, the keys to wash pack: permanent structure, climate controlled and enclosed, that worker comfort, and also just food safety. Cleanable, sanitizable surfaces. We have plumbing going to it to allow water to come in and go away. We have obviously electricity. We have it centrally located on our farm to limit the amount of transportation of product when it's harvested to the wash pack. We make it accessible for our delivery vehicle to get in there. And if we're in a climate that has a lot of rain or inclement weather, we can do that undercover. We're all on the same plane, flat surface, so carts can be utilized. There's no going up ramps or steps. Is there anything else that we're missing there in terms of key design factors that somebody could think about? Because these are all things that aren't applicable to scale. This could be a small building or a large building. Are we missing anything?
No, I think you've got it. Just a few little tips, things we've changed over the years. Consider your water line in and increasing the size of that pipe, so you're not waiting forever for the bubbler to fill. Also, you drain the way out. You're draining the bubbler. You want it to drain fast. That's a change we made when we put the new bubbler in. So it fills, it's twice as big and it fills twice as fast. Over the years, the one thing we've kept increasing in there is more lighting. So you're probably going to do your design, and then you're probably going to need double the lighting that you've accounted for in the beginning. And I think you need potable water. You need to do water tests for that. Depending, you might have town water that is potable, or you might be rural. We've got rainwater we collect off the roof. We have a UV filter for that. So we've also put systems in place so that every January, that's when my wife's home for the month, that's when we service everything. We just hit everything. It's in the calendar. We change the UV bulb. We do the water test. We calibrate the scales, all of that kind of stuff. These are all things that I think are pretty universal with getting sign-off. There'll be different names for what your sign-off is, but kind of coming back to when it's time for your auditor to come, we're signed off with National Program 1, that's the Food Act in New Zealand, and then for supermarket supply, we are signed off with GAP, which is global. It stands for Good Agricultural Practice, and we thought that was going to be the big one, getting GAP sign-off. Most of that sign-off process was done in the office, and a lot of our questions we were bypassed because most of them are about your spray program, and because we don't spray anything, we bypassed that. So when we took the auditor for GAP to our wash and pack, obviously we'd done a deep clean. He took one look and he said, I've seen enough. He didn't even want to know how the process runs and all our SOPs. He just took one look and he's like, you can have an operation in here. And we carried on looking around the farm. So yeah, the initial build, it's the big layer, it's the big cost. Just recapping, everything that you retrofit in there later on is not so costly, and you can do that over time, especially once you understand your processes. Like we wash and process things very differently now in our 6th season than we did in our first. And I know that's stating the obvious.
How are you different now?
So firstly, every farm is different. Everybody's does stuff differently. So there's no right or wrong. So this is how we do things. But like We do about 2 ton of microgreens a year, and we wash that in the bubbler because they separate the seed hulls out. We've got a pull screen in the bubbler. It took us 3 seasons to work out some very simple changes, like our salad spinner. We put all of our salad into clothes bags, and we worked out we can actually spin 3 clothes bags full of salad in one spin. We used to put 1 or 2 in there. We've tweaked our spinner simply by taping a magnet to the top so that it still has a lid, which means at nighttime it's closed. No insects can get in there or anything. And then during the day, by taping a magnet to the dashboard, that allows us to spin with the lid open. It simply just dries faster. And then putting everything on wheels, that's a continual change for us. That was a massive game changer for allowing us to do more in a very small space, especially in our bagging station. That's the tightest space in our wash and pack. We can have 4 people work that because we've maximized the space. Everything's on wheels. So as we're filling up crates, everything comes across the scales, gets packaged, labeled. It's standardized. We've got so many items in each crate. I know the value of each crate. The person that is doing the branding on the packaging and filling the crates, they just make a tower to the side of them, and they have replacement crates underneath the table ready to pull out and keep going. So 4 of us can work that space, and we don't need to say, excuse me, need to come past with 2 towers of salad for about every hour or something like that. And there's like, $1,500, $2,000 of product there. By the time we need to say, excuse me, you just wheel the salad that you're bagging, you wheel that away, you walk your towers of salad into the chiller, set up, keep going. So those kind of systems and processes, being closed in was a game changer, more lighting. And also just the other thing I think that's very generic for everyone is the weather on the day really, and your fast vegetables. If your baby Mizuna's taken 17 days to grow in summer and you had beautiful weather versus horrible 17 days of weather, it comes in different quality. And then the atmosphere, it might be hot and dry, it might be very cold and humid, high humidity. Your drying times are different, and you've got to adjust there with your quality. So we might spin some salads twice in a very cold 100% humid day. Our next investment is to put in temperature control in that space so we can keep it at 12 degrees Celsius and keep the humidity down. And we know that will be more comfortable for us working, but we can see that in challenging weather, we'll be able to get that salad across the drying screen quicker.
Yeah, I love that little tip there, and I like, build more lighting than you think you're going to need. I could say the same thing with power outlets. Put way more in than you ever think you're going to need. I'll just line the walls with them. The other things I'm thinking are like storage. If you're putting product into some sort of container, which most people are bags, clamshells, boxes, where is that going to be? It needs to be obviously somewhere close to where you're packing. If it is really humid, can you store your packing materials in there? If it's humid, you might need a separate adjacent structure or room to store that stuff. If it's cardboard and humid, eventually that might just go funky. So think about where you're going to stack all these, not the reusables, the consumables that you're putting product into. And, one thing I love that you talked about is, $1,500 to $2,000 worth of salad mix in there. And I think people can think about this way. It might sound like, oh man, you're putting a lot of emphasis on the wash pack. I could see this thing being very costly, and it will be. In trucking, there's this concept of the last mile. It's getting the product from the distributor to ultimately where it can go to a store to be sold to the consumer. And really the wash pack is like the last mile for a farm, at least in terms of time, because you've spent months seeding, caring for it in the nursery, tending it in the field, and it's in and out of the wash pack, most of this stuff in a day or two. So it's really the last mile. Every bit of work that you did for those days, weeks, months prior to hitting the wash pack can all be destroyed in a bad wash pack setup. If you can't store the product properly, if you can't clean it properly, then it's all, you might as well not have grown it. And you're competing against other farms in the small scale farm space, an ever increasingly competitive space where there's not a lot of product differentiation. I mean, your product might be great, Jody, but there could be a farm across the street kind of growing the same thing, and we could put them next to each other and nobody would be able to tell, possibly. But it comes down to little things like quality. Does it look good? Does it last when it gets to the end user? Appropriate cleaning and chillage help with keeping that product lasting in the customer and having it look good when the customer gets it. So if you think about it that way, like, this is how I maintain or value add all the work that I've done in the field. So if it costs me a whole bunch of money to grow the crop, this is how I add more value by just presenting it extra nice. You know, like you take grapes and now you turn them into wine. They're worth more as wine than they were to grapes. Well, salad mix is worth more in a bag than it is in the field. And it preserves all the work you did. So I think this is one area on the farm, like a high tunnel, where it's money well spent.
Yeah, I agree. It's got a couple of thoughts. Just backtracking. What you called consumables are like all of our packaging, for example. All of that is stored underneath the bagging table, but it's all in sealable containers. Any packaging that isn't being used is back in the sealed container, because just you've got to continually remember the Food Act. So nothing has potential for an insect to come and sit on it, or water to be sprayed on it, or if our packaging hits the floor, it goes in the trash. We've got this nothing touches the floor policy. Also, it's a lot of added value going on in the wash and pack. So if you've got too much salad for your market stream, my advice, and it is leave it in the field. Don't think I've grown it, I've got to bring it in and package it, wash and process it and package it and present it. If it's not going to sell, you better to leave it in the field than to pay wages for all of that added value process to go on when you don't have a sale for it. And I know that's a hard lesson when you're overproducing. That's a whole nother subject. The difference with what we've set up in the wash and pack and the skills we're developing in there is we're seeing the feedback from our customers and retailers, well, restaurant the same, but our salads are good for 2 weeks. We take them out after day 6, but our customers tell us all the time that shelf life is amazing, and that comes from, you know, how you've grown it, the time you bring it out the field, but it's really everything that happens post-harvest that increases the shelf life, along with your decisions. Like for us, Tops Off carrots, they last 3.5 weeks in retail. And this is something we've really focused on, is how can we increase the shelf life, which means saleable days for every crop we produce. In coriander, as an example, we bunch, and spring onions, we bunch these two in the outdoor washroom. We shake them out, and then we briefly put them on the drying screen to adjust the moisture. And then we made a long sleeve for these, and we seal that closed. Our coriander is good for 3 weeks in our retail stores, and it's selling like hotcakes. Prior to making that long sleeve, we were only selling cori to restaurants. And last year we sold an insane amount of spring onions, and people are just pumped when they're like, this item was good for 3 weeks. Like, our micros are good for 20 days. We eat sellers when they come back from our retail stores. That's our assurance. We know that nobody's going to have a problem, even if they're eating our salad at day 10. Keeping that focus there, the more you can increase your saleable days, I think the more profitable you become.
100% agree. For sure. And just to wrap this up, I hope the takeaway for this is people can see the importance of wash pack and some of the critical design factors that go into it. And this is one area where it's going to be an expensive investment. Like, I think this could be $5,000 to $30,000, depending on how extravagant of a building you're putting up. And this is one area where I think paying someone to give a second look at what you're doing is worth the money spent. Flying or driving to another farm that has a sweet wash pack and paying them for their time to look at something would be huge, because, who cares if you spend $500 up front on a $15,000 project and it saves you a $5,000 mistake. It was good money well spent. So, those are my thoughts. Definitely get experience. You saw a lot of farms before you built yours. You said you ran it across Curtis's desk and he gave some thoughts. I think, reaching out to somebody like you, Jody, or somebody else out there and visiting a farms and just seeing what are they doing, what do they like, what don't they like, would go a long way. And then again, keep the end in mind. Just because you're at stage 1 of your farm now, where do you want to be in 10 years? Like, leave some doors open to expand, to grow, and to adapt with that. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Just one. When I worked in Curtis's Wash and Pack, August 2016, and, especially back then, you can see all of this on his YouTube. He made a phenomenal amount of content. Pretty much after I left, I watched through his YouTube, and Curtis shrunk everything down. He didn't reconfigure too much. He just brought everything closer. And kind of recently, I've got the 2-step rule. Yeah, Curtis shrunk his wash and pack down, brought all of his worktops, benches closer to each other. And I could see I was intrigued. And as we've done that in our wash and pack too, I can see that your workflow increases, your productivity increases. Everything is 2 steps away, every task.
Love the idea of that. And maybe next week we can get into actually talking about some of the equipment in the wash pack, what that is, what are our options there, and what people can do to get product clean and put it into that space. There you have it, Jody Roebuck on wash pack setup, the building. Next week we'll come back and talk about the equipment that goes inside that building. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to learn more, be sure to follow along with Jody's Farm on Instagram using the link below. If you like this type of subject matter and you want to hear more about a different topic, maybe that's harvesting, maybe it's seeding, hit me up on Instagram at Diego Footer and let me know what you'd like us to do a future episode on. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So hit me up at Diego Footer. That's all for this one. Thanks for listening. Until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.